All right, guys, so this video is about how you can improve your social interactions, how you can get rid of social anxiety completely, and what I've learned after hundreds of thousands of social interactions. I'm not talking about hundreds, I'm not talking about 10,000, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands. Over the years, I've worked plenty of jobs, fast food, hotel, restaurants, anything you can think of. I worked it and I was constantly interacting with people. And now I do door to door sales. So not only do I interact with hundreds of people a day, but I also face rejection over and over and over and over and over again. And I also do YouTube. So I've practiced my speaking abilities. But at one point in my life, my social skills were not as sharp as they are now. And the same reason you guys have problems socializing is the same reason I had problems socializing. Because before you go into any interaction, you always ask yourself, what am I going to say? Whether it's talking to women, whether it's talking to a customer, whether it's talking to someone new, once you've interacted with hundreds of thousands of people, I'm talking about work, I'm talking about sales, I'm talking about dates, I'm talking about approaching women. I've talked to so many people and socialized so many times that here are the lessons that I've learned on how I solved my problems for myself, okay? Because when you go into an interaction and you're telling yourself, what am I going to say? What are they gonna say? And what are they gonna say that I'm gonna say something too? When you go into a conversation, when you go into an interaction with that mindset, you're already shooting yourself in the foot because you're not confident in yourself. When you're confident in yourself, when you have self-esteem, you trust yourself and your abilities. You trust yourself that you will come up with whatever it is in the moment. So that way you can flow and every conversation you get into naturally flows. If the other person is also contributing into the conversation, because a conversation is not just one sided. If it's one sided, that's an interview, okay, or an interrogation. A conversation is an exchange of information. Here's some information. Let me feed off that. Here's some information back. You feed off that. And it continually keeps going. And that's how you keep a conversation flowing. So when you can confidently trust in your abilities, when you can confidently trust in yourself to back yourself up and understand that it doesn't matter what they say. If they say something, great. That's exactly what I need to keep the conversation going. Doesn't matter what they say, I'll come up with something because they're adding fuel to the fire. The only way that a conversation can die down is if the other person just stops responding, if they stop caring overall, right? So at one point in my life, like I said, I was always thinking about what am I going to say? But we're in this different type of social setting. What do I say in this setting? Oh, but we're in this setting. What do I say in this setting? Listen, the only reason why I was thinking that is because I didn't trust in my own abilities. I didn't trust in myself. But after practicing, after learning, after going through hundreds of thousands of interactions, and not only did I do this willingly, but it was kind of forced and not in a forceful way as if someone was holding a gun to my head, but I basically dove into the water head first, right? Because I became a server at one point, and when you're a server, what do? You have to take people's orders, you have to interact, you have to have conversations with people so that way they can give you a good tip, right? And then eventually I became a bartender. And what do you do when you're a bartender? When you're a bartender, you have to sit here and not only do you, because as a server, it's a little bit different, right? You serve the people and then you go away. As a bartender, you're behind the bar and you're getting hundreds of people coming in, right? There's hundreds of people, especially if you're working in a busy bar. Hundreds of people are going to come in. They're going to come in. Some people are going to stay, some people are going to go. People are going to come in groups. And you, as the bartender, especially if you're by yourself, which many times I did run the bar by myself, you have to deal with all these people. And it's not only just serving them a drink and that's it. No, for the most part, you have to sit there and talk with them for a long time, right? Especially if your shift is 8 hours long. Some people might stay for 3 hours. Some people might stay for 4 hours. So you kind of have to be forced into these social interactions so that you sharpen your skills along the way when you're there. You're not thinking about what am I going to say, but what are they going to say? No. Whatever comes up is what comes up, right? Because what you need to understand about socializing is that if you're not present in the moment, if you're not fully present, and what I mean by that is you're projecting into the future thinking, what am I going to say? What are they going to say? In that moment, you're not present, because when you're present, what are you doing? You're fully immersed in the moment. Meaning, when you're fully immersed in the moment, anything that comes your way, you can attack it right there, right then and right there. You don't have to think of a response. And when you're flowing in the moment, let me zoom in real quick. When you're flowing in the moment, you can talk about anything. Because let's just use this door for an example, right? I'm going to use this door for an example, okay? So let's just say we're talking about whatever, right? We're talking about anything. And I just say, "Oh, look, this door, do you know what type of wood this door is made out of?" You see, I'm not thinking about this ahead of time. I'm simply just making it up as I go, right? But this is just an example how you can make a conversation out of anything. It doesn't have to be like, what am I going to say? But what are we going to talk about? There is no one set rule about what you have to talk about. You talk about whatever you want. And as you go into that conversation, you continue getting more information out of the other person. And then you might shift topics a little bit. And then they might say something that you might want to dive deeper into because it's a point you might want to touch on, right? So let's just say this door. We're talking, we're having a conversation. Have you seen this door before? These doors right here are actually from Puerto Rico. And you want to know how I know that? Because back in the day, about 4 years ago, I lived in Puerto Rico. And I lived in Puerto Rico and I would see them make these doors. And the funny thing about it, the history behind these doors is that these workers, they go out into the fields and they chop down all these trees, and they make these doors out of the wood that they get in the forest, right? So you see how I'm just talking shit. I'm just making things up. Hold on, I think the live stream just ended. But you see how I'm just making something up, right? It's the same thing with social interactions. When you go into a social interaction, whether it's you're approaching a woman, whether it's you're having a business meeting, whether you're going to an interview, no matter what the social interaction is, when you go into it and you say, okay, I'm just ready. I'm ready for whatever comes my way. This is how a conversation starts. It always starts with a hello, right? Hi, how are you doing? That's the right way to do it. That's the right way to go about it. Otherwise, it's kind of rude, don't you think? To just start talking without even saying hello properly, right? So when you properly introduce yourself after that, the conversation is limitless. There's hundreds of thousands of topics that you can go into. It doesn't have to be a specific topic. Like, you go into a conversation, random person, you don't even know this person. That's the best thing about it. Some people get anxious and social anxiety from thinking about, well, I don't know this person. What am I going to talk about? You don't know them exactly. That's the best possible scenario that you can think of, because there's so much to know about this person. When you walk into a place and you just meet them, hey, what's going on, man? Or hey, speaking to a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. And you're talking with them and you're saying, introduce yourself. My name is so and so. Oh, what's your name? Oh, that's a cool name. Where is it from? See, just off the name, you can already go into that. If they have a name that's interesting, you can go ahead and dive into that. You could say, well, where's that name from? Oh, that, like, my name comes from the Bible. So whenever people ask me, where does your name come from? That's already a conversation starter in itself. Because when they ask me, where does your name come from? And I say it's in the Bible, and they say, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. I never heard that name. Yeah, it's in the Bible. So are you religious? Oh, my parents are religious, right? So this is a conversation that's starting just off the name. And then after that, you can go ahead and shift over to where are you from? And then they tell you, oh, I'm from New York. Really? I was raised in Florida. I can only imagine what it's like living in New York City. What was it like? Because New York City is such a different place from Florida. So the fact that you grew up in New York City and now you're in Florida, there must be like a huge difference, right? The city life must be completely different than the life here in Florida. So what was that like? And now they talk to you. Well, I grew up and in New York City, there's hundreds of thousands of people every single day, new faces. You see them walking around. Everyone's serious. No one really interacts with each other. And that's when you can say, man, I can only imagine what that does to you growing up. Instead of being around people like in Florida where everyone says hello and everyone's friendly, everyone's walking around serious, mean mugging. So did that make you into like a tougher person? Like, did you have to develop thicker skin? You see how I'm just making this up? I'm just making it up out of nowhere. And when you go into conversations like this, you start to trust in yourself. You start to let go of this need to be perfect. Because when you're worried about what to say, you're worrying about the need to be perfect. Approaching a woman. Oh, but what if she rejects me? What am I going to say? I got to make sure everything is perfect. I got to make sure I come up with the perfect scenario. But you're going into it already making a pre-planned response. And let's just say that whatever it is that you planned in your head goes the way you planned. Let's just say, right? And then you go into it, you say what you wanted to say that you already planned in your head, and then she says something and maybe you thought about it, right? Because it could go wrong. She could completely shift up her answer and you weren't even expecting that. Now what's the plan? Now what's the plan? But let's just say she goes with whatever it is you were planning. And then she responds to it and you say what you planned, and then that's it. Now the conversation dies because you're not present in the moment. You were projecting into the future, and now you've gotten into the situation. You've projected into the future, but now what happens? That's it. You ran out of content. You ran out of material to talk about because you're not living present in the moment, as opposed to going into it trusting yourself and trusting that whatever it is that you say is going to be righteous. Whether she rejects you, whether she enjoys your conversation, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you're not worried about what the other person is going to say. When you're worried about what the other person is going to say or what they think about you, that's when social anxiety creeps in. That's when social anxiety starts to take over and you start to run out of things to say because you're limiting yourself. You're limiting yourself from your true potential. Your true potential is that you're limitless. There's nothing in this earth that can stop you from speaking. If I wanted to talk right now for 24 hours, I could do it. I'm not saying that it's going to be fun. I'm not saying I'm going to enjoy speaking for 24 hours. That would low-key be torturous, right? I would sit here, my mouth would be dry, my head would probably hurt, my jaw would hurt, all because I'm sitting here talking for 24 hours. But I'm not planning any of this because I'm limitless. I'm a limitless person. I'm a limitless human being. So when you are thinking about what am I going to say, you're placing limits on yourself, and you're really, it's like if you were a Ferrari and you had the engine of a Ferrari. You had everything, the look, everything, but there was something in the computer that limited you. Something in the computer. If you had that Ferrari and it limited you, even though you could probably go 200 miles, right? It limits you because of the belief that you can only go 20 miles per hour. So you're driving at 20 miles per hour, even though you have a Ferrari, and you can go way faster. You can talk about anything, but you need to start practicing. You need to take what I gave you in this video, extract it, and apply it to your life. Every interaction you go into, stop thinking about yourself. Just go into it without the fear of rejection, without the fear of failure. If you're going to fail, listen, it's okay. You're not going to die, right? The only thing you should really, really worry about is if whatever it is that you're doing is going to lead you to death. Is talking to someone and saying something that might come off as awkward or embarrassing or stupid or whatever the case may be, is that going to lead to death? No, you're not going to die. You're actually going to survive, and the person is going to forget about it in a day or two. If you said something awkward, they're going to forget about it. They're not going to remember that. I'm not going to remember it. You might say something awkward in the moment. Sure, it's embarrassing, it's awkward. Okay, whatever. We forget about it. We're humans. We go on about our day. So start going into interactions. And even if you're not the most social person in the world, because people say I'm a social butterfly and all these things, what they don't understand is I was an introvert at one, well, not at one point. I'm still an introvert because being social and being introverted are not linked. People think that just because you're an introvert, you're not social. You say, well, I'm not social because I'm an introvert. No, you're not social because you lack social skills. Because you can be like myself, an introvert, and yet have social skills. Back in the day when I didn't have social skills, I was an introvert, but that wasn't the reason why I couldn't. Well, not that I couldn't, that's not the reason why I wasn't talking and socializing as much as I do now. It's because I simply just didn't practice the skill. And every skill is learned. Every skill you're going to suck at first. You're not going to be good at any skill that you start, until you fail, until you get your reps in, and you repeat it over and over and over until you finally get the hang of it. So if you can take away anything from this video, it's to be fully immersed in the moment. Be present. Stop thinking about what you're going to say. Let it come to you. Let it come to you, because when you're in the moment, it'll come to you. You'll completely forget about all these plans that you had in your head to say the perfect thing, and just be comfortable in the fact that you might say something awkward. You might say something embarrassing, but you're going to forget about it and they're going to forget about it too. And that's how you get better. All right. That's the video for today. Peace out.